Yeah.
So those services are everything from catering trailers to porta potties to security guards to maps and permits and stuff like that.
Cool. All right, I think that's good for that diagram. I mean, that flow chart, I think I've got a good sense of what's going on there. So let's go to the next one, which is place a vendor order for a set, which looks like you were referencing at the very end of the first one, or adding orders, right? And then it says see additional flow. So the first box, coordinate with production team to determine order details. So is then
so I mean that's just really like now they're just doing their job, right? So they gather all the information that they need to communicate to other people and to communicate with their vendors, and then they start inputting that into the system.
Okay.
So step one, if they don't have a vendor for something, they can go in and reference, we have a database of vendors that people have used on other shows. So if they need a tent vendor or whatever, they can find that person there, add them to their show.
Yep.
And then inside the show, they select that service and say, I want that inside the set. Sorry, they say I want this service for my order, and then they fill in details. They've got a PO number, the inventory that they want, notes, delivery times, documents they can add as well. Who's going to get notified, and then they send that order to the vendor, and everybody sort of gets updated and notified that this order is official.
Mm-hmm.
The production, the vendor reviews, they might update the order, right? In which case the production has to approve it back. And this is kind of a unique situation here, where if you think about Amazon, right?
Yep.
I'm my own man on Amazon. It's the Wild West, right? I can go in, place a bunch of orders, and then I send that off into the ether, and a package shows up. And very rarely is there any kind of communication or coordination with somebody on the other end. Versus Uber, right? Like, so the second it's a service, right? So the second with a human. So the second I order the car, then it's like, hey, this car's coming, and it's this specific car, and here's the guy, and here's his phone number if you guys need to do any sort of coordination and communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're really much closer to the latter, where it's and even more extreme, right? So in Uber, I don't know who I'm getting ahead of time, but in here, it's like, here's the vendor that I want. As soon as I place the order, they're going to be notified. They're going to go through that order line by line with me, or without, on their own, and then communicate back like, hey, all of this looks really good, and I confirm that I'm going to deliver this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's much more of a concierge model.
Yeah.
Where I'm delivering what I want, maybe in fairly vague terms, and the vendor's helping me refine that order.
I see. That's actually a good way of putting it. The vendor's refining it. Like you're saying, I think I need this, that, and the other thing, and then the vendor confirms maybe that, well, the other thing is actually three things, right? It's these three things. Okay, yeah. So refining it and
the vendor actually brings a lot of expertise here, because not only do they work consistently with the show, so they have over time, at least, they get a good idea of like what the show's needs are, but also they work at these locations consistently, right? So if we work at a given ranch, or we work at like a filming ranch, or a given like area of the city, our guards and our team that have spent a lot of time there, they're like, hey, this is this kind of area, you might need some extra support, you might need some extra help, or whatever. And so they kind of help broker that together.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. Okay, yeah, so like that iterative order defining or something like that, it is different. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so then I just noticed there's a box, watchers and vendors notified of changes. So you, like, through these iterations, would you sort of be sending out notifications, or maybe, I don't know how.
Right. Yeah, so there's an initial, like, hey, I've completed an iteration of this order, and they send that off.
Yeah.
And then, any time after that things are getting updated or the status of that order changes, then anybody who had said they wanted to hear about it would get notified.
Okay, cool. All right. So then, like, I'm just looking step by production and vendor, make order comments, fine. And then access budget views to see order impact on sets, episode production. I think you guys thought this was kind of interesting, actually, or, somewhat different than people had before, right? To be able, the studio executive folks like this, right? I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unique for production. I don't think it's anything revolutionary, right?
Okay.
It's just sort of, if you've got a budget, you should be able to break it down in various different ways and say like, oh, I want to see this by set, I want to see this by service, I want to see it by episode, and kind of get a glance at what's going on the show.
Okay, cool. All right, I think that gives me a good sense on that one. I think that's rich. That's got some, the iterative nature of that is interesting, and I think there's something we can do with that on the patent side. One thing that I'll have to think about is how to, I mean, in a way, these are like they could be linked, but they're in a way 4 discrete processes, and, can we put these together somehow, right? I mean, that's not necessarily ideal from your perspective, from Brett, because of patent claim, because, somebody just doesn't do one of these and then they don't infringe your patent, right? So ideally, you might have one claim, in a way it's a narrower claim, in a way it seems broader perhaps, but it's it's a very general recitation of these 4 pieces, let's say, and then, but you might have other claims which are very specific to this particular figure, has nothing to do with any of the other, right? So that's the way we'll have to slice and dice it. But we don't, given that we're going to do a provisional application, we don't need to worry about that so much right now. We just need to sort of get the content out there, and this is good from that perspective. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the ordering and the set flow really go hand in hand, right? It's like the orders are, that's the end result of why you're putting this set in there, is so that you can kind of create those orders.
That's a good point. Like, why would you, the set doesn't have a lot of purpose otherwise.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all to facilitate this ordering and whatnot. Okay. So let's just talk through. It can be quick if it's the managing the show team, figure 3, and certainly comment if you think there's anything that you had to do different here than somebody else wouldn't have to do in the industry.
So here's what's kind of unique about this, and it maybe doesn't come out very well from this design.
Yeah.
Is we're really treating the entire film industry as a single company almost. It's almost like a social network. So if you, and this is sort of how they see themselves, right? These show teams kind of split up and reform on new shows, and everybody sort of works with everybody else in different configurations.
Yeah.
So if you think about a typical like enterprise software model of, okay, I go work at a new place and I get assigned to their Slack and their Google, accounts and whatever. And it kind of lives inside that organization. We actually have the opposite thing, where it's like my account in Production Mason is going to outlast the production that I'm working on.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
So like once I've created an account, that's there forever, and people can go and find me and associate me with the show, and then disconnect me from the show as well if they want to. And so, that's really, I think that inviting existing users kind of thing is unique for an enterprise software tool like this, right? You would typically like create a new account for someone to become part of your show, and then that's it, right? Log into that show. And in here, it's just like you get associated with all of the shows that you've worked on.
That's pretty interesting, actually, yeah. And so that would be even with different studios and everything, right? I mean,
yeah.
Right.
And I keep waiting for the pushback to come on this, actually, as we test.
Well, that's what I was thinking, is like, maybe Universal or whatever doesn't want that the information for this guy that worked at a different studio available for some reason, right? They want it. Yeah. I don't know.
So the interesting thing is that all of the secrecy around a show, or like, the things that in other places you might consider to be maybe proprietary, or people would not want to release them, like certainly like Marvel gets nervous about people taking photos on set, right? Or like
Right.
releasing stuff about what's going to happen in the movie, and
Right.
and that's like really sensitive data. But the second that film also has this other interesting side of it, which is like, you know, what other industry do you have where the success and failure of every single project is reported publicly every week?
Yeah.
You know, because the nature of this show is like kind of independent contractors that like no longer work for the, you know, that are financially interested. They have to do a lot of things out in public, and so it kind of makes for an interesting, like, most people are really, really open about, say, like, if you filmed at this place before, how did it work? Like, you don't work for that show anymore as soon as it's over. So there's not a sense of like guarding secrets really that much. And in fact, it's usually the opposite. People are really aggressive about sharing what they've learned and like, oh, you're filming here? Let me tell you all about it.
That's interesting.
Most people,
yeah.
we have the location stuff designed so that it, you know, it doesn't show you what shows were filmed there. It only shows you the count of times. So it's like, how many times was it used as a base camp or whatever? And people are like, cool, can I see what shows were filmed there? And we're like, well, would you want your shows to be shown to other people? And like, oh yeah, totally, I don't care. And in fact, you can put my name on it and say, I worked at this, and if you want to contact me, go for it.
That's really interesting. Well, clearly the studios aren't asking like these guys to sign NDAs or something, right? You know,
they do sign NDAs, but like from a tech standpoint, right now everything they're doing is like in some dude's Gmail and Google, you know, accounts at best. So they're doing everything, like there's no control over this now.
Yeah.
So, you know, even us initiating this a little bit is already kind of, they're much more excited about the limited kind of control than they are concerned about like access to data. We'll see, you know, it's if the platform, you know, like booms in popularity and you start to get pushback on certain things, it'll be interesting to see if that becomes something that people worry about. But you know, we've tried to basically mirror this on what we see as the way that the industry operates, as opposed to, you know, the way software tends to operate. And so far, people have been really receptive to it. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. And like you said, like it is sort of different. It's not like a tech product or something where even after the product's released, there's all these trade secrets that are maybe relevant. It's sort of like it's like once the movie's released, it's sort of like completely irrelevant, all this other stuff, right? And
yeah,
it doesn't have...
yeah. You have the product. You don't care about the process,
right? That's a great way of putting it, because it's not going to help really somebody compete, like another studio compete with you to sort of in any material way to have all this, other information, right? You know, it might reduce their costs and help their bottom line, but it's not going to make the movie. It's not going to make for a better movie. Let's put it that way, from a creative point of view. It might help cost, right? You know, the next movie, if they've got the production data, or what set locations are advantageous from a parking perspective or something. But that's just like down in the cost weeds, right? It's not. It doesn't have anything to do with the right. So yeah. So cool. All right. So, and I can see why they would be, you know, the powers that be would be excited about that, right? That aspect of it. So, okay.
So, I mean, this is just, it's pretty unique. I was going to say the only since this kind of came up, and this is sort of the way the design has turned, I've been kind of aggressively trying to find other business models that follow this, or other apps that kind of follow this model.
Yeah.
The only service that I've seen that sort of mirrors it is GitHub.
Okay, GitHub.
Are you familiar with GitHub?
A little bit. I mean,
so it's kind of a code repository, right? And most people use GitHub or something like it to sort of host all their code, and they can see all the changes. And what's interesting is that, like, as a developer, you don't create, so like you start at a new place, you don't create a new GitHub account. They just associate your GitHub account with that organization.
Yep.
And what that does is it's kind of turned, and we hope to do this as well at some point, but it's kind of turned GitHub into this essentially professional vetting service. Like, I can go in, even if I can't see the work that someone's doing, I can see all the commits, all the code that they're pushing, and I can see kind of their history and like how long they've been a developer, and it's a much more grounded way of seeing, you know, people's contributions.
Yeah.
Assuming that they're on GitHub, but you know, most people are.
Yeah.
unless you're a Google or Microsoft or something like that.
Yeah.
In which case you're gonna have no trouble getting a job anyway. But but if you have that, you're kind of seeing that, and that's sort of one of the things we'd like to be able to do as well, is that if I'm searching for people like, oh, I need a location assistant, who's available, and like what have they done, and I click on their info here and I'd see maybe a little like a LinkedIn kind of profile of like, here's all the shows I've worked on, why you should hire me, and yeah, so
I totally see that. Yeah, like yeah,
it's just kind of another aspect of the app it's a sideline now, but could become something bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how this is in your world, right? That it just something on LinkedIn, it doesn't fit the right way for something like this, right? Just
they use IMDb actually is like their main. It's not a social network at all, right? But it's their main as their calling card. So it's like if someone was like, "What are you up to?" They send them their IMDb page.
Oh, is that true? I have like gone to IMDb once in a while. Just I get redirected there when I'm looking into a movie. I didn't realize it was like actually used by the industry. You know what I mean? Like,
it didn't start out that way, and I think they just got so good at capturing everything. I think it's owned by Amazon now, actually.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Shocking, right?
But they got so good at just cataloging things that it became a nice, and they just like a nice reference point where all of your shows would be in there.
Got it. Okay, so I think that's good. And then the last flowchart, figure 4. I don't know if you just want to talk through that one. I think you said this one was maybe a little more conventional, but we can talk about it.
Yeah, so it's really about the vendor kind of creating their and pricing their the rental type, or the thing that they're selling. So we've got staff, service, and rentals. They've got photos. They add it to their order form that the production see, and then they invoice based off of that. So it's basically just this very straightforward, classic kind of like inventory ordering process.
And the add item photo and additional details, like item. This is establishing sort of a product for. Or this is after the fact? I mean, just what's the context in the vendor product and project? Yeah.
So if I'm a vendor, I have a catalog of stuff that I sell, right? And it could just be like 3 things. Like we sell security guards, supervisors, and armed guards. Right?
Okay, that's a good example.
And 90% of our stuff, our revenue is just off of security guards.
Yeah.
So we're only going to have a handful of these. If I'm a supplies rental company, I might rent hundreds of things.
Yep.
And so, then I have to go in and manage those items and see, what's available now and adjust prices and things like that.
Okay. All right. Add an item to a vendor order form. Add pricing adjustments as needed for productions. Okay. So in other words, there might be different kinds of pricing for different kinds of productions or something like that on that part C, or.
Yeah, we do have like a dynamic kind of pricing thing that we're at a bare minimum sort of per production discounts. So one of the things, again, in this kind of concierge model is negotiated pricing.
Yeah.
So almost every show has a negotiated rate. I did an analysis, and it was something I can't even remember what it was. Something like we charged 78 different rates for various shows over the last like few years.
Wow.
So and there, some of them are pennies apart, but it's you end up in these big negotiations to like win a show, and then once you're in the show, you're in the show.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so then production places order executed, send invoice in the system, verify pricing, and da. Okay, that all seems pretty straightforward. Yeah, and I'll just think about it as to how, I mean, I'll probably pay maybe a little less attention to that part than the other parts.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to not include it, I wouldn't feel bad about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm always hesitant to do that, but if we just don't see any, sometimes it can't stand on its own, but maybe it can be part of some other kind of claim that we want to make. But after I get through the first 3, diagrams, I'll have a better context to understand maybe this fits in somehow, would be interesting, but we can